enjoyed that in the other films as well. This not even dissonance between, language and image, so that the viewer has a space of their own to imagine, to conjure up what they personally see and feel.
Hi, my name is Stefanie Schulte-Strathaus, head of the Forum Expanded section of the Berlinale. I am happy to speak to 5 directors of our short film program No.1. Kerstin Schroedinger, Songs of the Shirt. It's a 4-part film, each part consisting of only 1 minute. PolakVanBekkum, which is Esther Polak and Ivar van Bekkum. They made Lost on Arrival. Then we have Cynthia Beatt. Böse zu sein ist auch ein Beweis von Gefühl. Fury is a Feeling Too, which is a film from 1983 and was recently restored. And last but not least, we have Emily Wardill with Night for Day. Hi, great to see you all together.
Morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
You look very professional.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You are already introduced. I would like to, in the beginning, speak to each of you individually, very briefly, before we start a group conversation, because our short film programs are always, we try to really compose them. And so maybe we will have the time to speak a little bit about some ideas that you all, or the films, share. We start with Kerstin Schroedinger, Songs of the Shirt. It's actually 4 short films, each of them about 1 minute long. And they were made in the context of an installation. But maybe you could start by saying 1 or 2 sentences about the films.
They are kind of satellites, as I call them, from this longer video that is an installation. Each is a song sung by a choir. And they're quotes from different songs that come from the 19th century until late 20th century, related to textile production or industrialization and the brutal transformation of society that came with that. So the title song is The Song of the Shirt, which is from the 19th century. Mid-19th century. And so you see a black film that is pierced by a sewing machine, which you can see here in my background, is the making of the situation of the film. And that's also something that is kind of, so I was trying to make a connection between the sewing machine and the film projector, which basically have a similar mechanism and have a similar evolvement or coming into being. And I think they work a bit like short interruptions or disturbances, like a choir in a theater maybe that is kind of commenting on something or adding something to the plot, but not really being part of it, like from outside.
With fingers weary and warm, with eyelids heavy and red, a woman sat in a womanly rags, plying her needle and thread. Stitch, 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 in poverty, hunger and dirt, and still with a voice of dolorous pitch, she sang the song of the shirt.
PolakVanBekkum, Esther Polak and Ivar van Bekkum, you made the film Lost on Arrival. Could you also give us a brief summary of the film?
Shall I do that, Esther? Okay, the film is about a man who wants to move to the island he once lived, which is 1,000 kilometers more south, after his retirement. And he buys a house, but he doesn't move yet. And by the time he really wants to move physically, his dementia has evolved already a few years. And basically, when he flies there, he arrives, he doesn't remember really that he's there. So physically he arrives, but mentally he doesn't.
Op hetzelfde moment denk ik dan, nou eens kijken waar de tickets zijn. En nou, ik kijk in mijn tas, want dat is denk ik de enige plaats waar ik mijn tickets opberg.
I would like to continue with Cynthia Beatt. Böse zu sein ist auch ein Beweis von Gefühl. Fury is a feeling too. A film from 1983. How would you describe it?
I would describe it as a cathartic exercise, because for me it was that, I mean, in the aftermath of making the film, it was a very necessary exercise for me to address certain issues which were present in my everyday life in Berlin. And as I lived in that particular spot, I decided to film in approximately 1 square kilometer around the factory building, the old factory building in which I lived. And it's a very time specific or era specific film. It's very strange looking at it now, because you just cannot imagine that Berlin ever existed, that West Berlin. And of course, that was one of the strangest areas, with the wall and the ruins and the empty spaces, and I had to approach it with the help of Heinz Emiholz, who of course was a very provocative partner, as a kind of self-critical exercise as well.
Ein Haus ist auch ein Text, durch den eine andere Zeit lesbar wird. Es gab einen bestimmten Sinnzusammenhang in der Zeit, in der man das Haus entworfen hat, und die Stadt entwickelt sich und überliefert etwas wachsend Kompliziertes über die Jahrhunderte.
Emily Wardill, Night for Day is the title of your film. Could you also tell us briefly what the film is about? It's a wrong question. Could you present the film briefly?
So it was. It's a film that's based on the conceit of the film technique day for night, but I was trying to reverse it to think about what would happen if somebody who was a kind of a revolutionary fighting against fascism gave birth to this young man who's setting up a kind of AI business to try and get machines to recognize moving images. And so it's set up through this kind of conversation between a son and a mother. And the son is also trying to construct a film from kind of fragmentary stuff. So from interviews or from a location that might be the house that they lived in, and from also this sense of like somebody trying to know another person, or the impossibility of trying to know another person, but through this idea of that then being a construct to think about a moving image.
A utopia é como a luz que se vai afastando e nós vamos atrás dela, mas é preciso ir atrás dela. E a verdade é que há neste momento a perda das utopias. Eu participo em muitas reuniões políticas. E as reuniões do Conselho, o que é? Vamos lá ver o que é que o António Costa vai fazer, o que é que a esquerda pode fazer, e vamos ver coisas práticas, e as leis de base da saúde e da habitação e o trabalho, mas nunca mais se falou de utopias. Afinal, qual é a sociedade que nós queremos? Fala-se no direito ao trabalho, que é justo, porque a gente sabe as implicações que o desemprego tem, mas não se fala no direito ao descanso.
What I find interesting about all your films, at least the three longer ones, is that they are all structured through dialogues. They play an important role, and conversations. And Kerstin, your film, you mentioned already the chorus. Maybe that's a different kind of a dialogue. And I would like all of you to speak a little bit about the dialogue as a structural element for film, but maybe Kerstin, you first could tell us a little bit more about, you spoke earlier about the songs that were sung and that the chorus sing, but the chorus itself as a format, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, as I said, I think it's a bit like a commentary voice or an added element that is kind of not involved in the plot, but sees it from outside. But one person I was working with said it reminded him of the suffragettes, more like a choir that is maybe formed of the workers or the women workers that protests kind of made their voices heard somehow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's more they're also not very, it's not like a sung choir, it's not like a melodic, pleasant choir, it's more like a, let's say, spoken choir, so they speak together. Yeah. And then there's also the element of the music that comes to that is more like mechanic, or like picking up the element of the machines, the projector and the sewing machine.
Mm-hmm. And Esther and Ivar, in your dialogue in the film, we hear only one voice, one side of the dialogue we hear. Could you speak a little bit about this element of the film?
It was a very interesting process because we had a huge archive of voice recordings of Ivar's phone calls with his dad about his move to Curacao from Sint Maarten, which is another tropical island. And we were in the Netherlands, so Ivar was again in a total different location. So the voices travel a lot, globally speaking. So that was really a fascinating archive to go into. And at some point we realized that the archive was not only relevant for our personal story or biography, but also had to do with the focus in our work, which is always around mobility patterns and why things and objects move around the world. And in this case, the distances could make tangible through those voices. So I said to Ivar, let's just try to make a sort of compilation of the recordings, whether it works to tell a story. And then Ivar just picked some dialogues, but it didn't work at all. And I don't know, and Ivar got this brilliant idea. Do you want to tell what you did then with the dialogue recordings that made them work, which I think is a very nice story.
We made this compilation, and I was listening to my conversations with my father, and I really kind of hated my own voice in that, because in my own voice were all these feelings about my life and his life and etc. And then I just pulled my voice out, and then I suddenly saw my father as this old man who was forgetting, like a genuine person who is trying to get his life together, keep it together. And that's how I think, maybe to say something about the other films, which I really liked, is that the conversation is not only playing in the film, but all the films are going to having a conversation with the audience. Like all the other 3 films I saw, they started a conversation with me.
that's I think very clear, Emily, in one moment of your film when the sons try, or I think it's happening on both sides actually, that that they try to imagine the other side, the other person's perspective or place, and which is of course also something that is, as you say, that Ivar, that is happening in the cinema between the audience and the characters. So could you speak a little bit about the structural the structure of the film, that the dialogue created in relation to the imagery that also plays an important role?
I suppose there's a really beautiful bit in Cynthia's film where he goes into the middle of a white space and he's talking about imaginary spaces. And we just see his figure from above in this white space, and he's talking about imaginary spaces. And I think also in Night for Day, I was trying to think about someone, the son, who might also be an artificial intelligence, trying to make this imaginary film or trying to make this imaginary space that then you, the audience, might become activated by. You might also start to do that, or you might start to piece these things together into your own film. So there were these kind of deliberate gaps, I guess, which is the deliberate gaps, or the not deliberate gaps, maybe, that exist in all dialogue.
Yeah,
that I was trying to reproduce.
Yeah. The mental space was already mentioned earlier, and then Cynthia, your film actually begins with a dialogue about the brain. Actually, in German, the German word or difference between Hirn and Gehirn, mind, brain. A dialogue that you have with Heinz Emichholz, and you mentioned it already yourself. He was a very important partner in the film, like really partner in the sense of that the two of you create a dialogue that also is about two languages. And so could you also speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing for me. I love to read dictionaries, and I'm very interested in the whole question of translation. And so that was, my understanding of words in German was always a big thing for me. But it's also about creating dialogues which are not identical to to what's going on in the film. And this is something that I'm increasingly interested in. I enjoyed that in the other films as well. This not even dissonance between language and image, so that the viewer has a space of their own to imagine, to conjure up what they personally see and feel.
I think actually that all of your films are very much also films about cinema, and this would maybe be a last question for Emily about there are many references to film history also in your film. What role do they play?
I guess that's why I was asking Kerstin this question too, because I'm also really interested in kind of industrial cinema and what would happen had that connection between industry and cinema not been forged so with such kind of force. And it's hard because there are many things that I was thinking about when I was making the film that address that question. Like, for instance, what would a film that was made by a computer look like, or what kind of indelible images get repeated in cinema, and what could it be if it were otherwise, and also what can technology see that we can't see, and then when it sees, what does it see that we stop being able to see? And all of these questions were kind of coming through, trying to think about cinema, but like trying to think about it from within it in a way.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I think it's a great program. Thank you very much, Stefanie. It's I think they're very interesting links between all the films, and yeah.
Thank you. No, thank you, really. And I'm also very much looking forward to seeing the program as a program in this specific order that I hope it works, that we put together in June. And let's hope that those of you who are not in Berlin will have the chance to be here with us. We don't know yet. But if not, we will have more Zoom opportunities to bring you in, to Zoom you in, because I think this was only the beginning of our conversation, and the films will continue to speak to each other by themselves, and then we meet again latest in June. I'm very much looking forward to that, and I would like to thank you all for being with us and sharing the films and your time with us.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Stefanie.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.